Hey, everybody, welcome to Locked On Lakers on YouTube. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. Some more coaching news for the Lakers. We've already seen David Fizdale replace Jason Kidd on the Frank Vogel's staff. News this week that Lionel Hollins, who had interviewed for an associate head coach in Portland, didn't get that job. Instead, that went to Scott Brooks, who, by the way, interviewed in LA, probably in case Lionel Hollins left.
Yeah, it's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, except it's not for a disaster. You're just getting ahead of the things you need to do.
Exactly. So it's just responsible behavior. Also, very interesting news reported by Kyle Goon of the Southern California News Group on a great feature on Lakers assistant Phil Handy. Handy has interviewed for the Washington Wizards job, which was vacated by Scott Brooks. And he doesn't appear.
All of this is incestuous, Brian. It's like a non-sexual incestuousness. It's all a little weird.
So we presume.
It is true.
It is.
We've been around the league a long time, but we don't know everything.
The news on Handy is interesting because it's not that he's in line to get the job. It appears that is going to go, at least right now, the front runner there reportedly is Wes Unseld Jr. But what is interesting is that Phil Handy, who is a guy that we get asked about all the time and has just now finished a run of, I think it's 6 straight finals, won a title with LeBron in Cleveland, won a title with Kawhi in Toronto, won another title with LeBron in LA. It shows the incredible amount of respect that he has around the league. And people have asked us a lot, like, are they in danger of losing Phil Handy? The answer is yes. Even if it's not this year, it almost seems inevitable now it's going to happen at some point.
Yeah, when you're talking about an assistant coach who has a ton of respect with star players, and this goes back to Mike Brown's tenure as Lakers head coach and the relationship that Phil Handy built with Kobe and with Pau Gasol, Steve Nash. And then we've seen him go through guys like LeBron, Kyrie Irving, Kawhi Leonard, like beyond the development that Phil Handy's renowned for and has a ton of respect around the league, basketball mind, all of that stuff. The ability to get along with stars is something not all coaches, even very good ones, have. Phil Handy has that. So that in and of itself is going to make him a really valuable asset around different staffs around the league.
Yeah, and I just think, when you look at the caliber of player and person who will vouch for Phil Handy, who keep apparently trying to get him from one place to the next, it really does tell you everything you need to know about his skill as a coach. And so the other thing that I think is really interesting about this is that we've had a lot of discussions over the course of the offseason around the NBA, watching coaching vacancies get filled, sometimes a little quicker than some people would like. This is a great example of how the process is supposed to work. You have a guy in Phil Handy who comes from a different background than a lot of coaches. He's a development guy. And so he's getting an opportunity to interview for a head coaching job. This is the process, the way that it's supposed to work, particularly with minority coaches, where you get a legitimate shot, and teams like the Wizards look around the league, talk to people, because this interview, even if Phil Handy doesn't get the job, is valuable for making those connections. So the next time he interviews, the time after that, more doors get open. This is an example of how the process is supposed to work.
Yeah, it's a developmental version of the wave of video guys who ended up getting head coaching jobs like Eric Spoelstra or Frank Vogel with the Lakers. Also, when you look at Jamal Mosley reportedly on the verge of getting hired by the Orlando Magic, a team with a lot of similarities to the Wizards in terms of their standing around the league, it's also, I think, just an example of guys who've put in their time getting the consideration, because that's what happened ultimately with Steven Silas in Houston last year. Jamal Mosley, who'd been on Rick Carlisle's staff for years in Dallas, another guy who's put in his time. Phil Handy's put in his time. Ime Udoka getting hired by the Boston Celtics. Like, you're supposed to be having guys who aren't Jason Kidd, who are not Chauncey Billups, whose stature alone will not always keep them in that conversation. So there's a lot of different ways, like you're talking about with Phil Handy, that you're seeing the system work the way it's actually supposed to.
Yep. So a lot of news still to come with the Lakers. It's not just the draft, which we're going to start getting into in a big way over the course of the next couple of weeks, and free agency, which we'll obviously be getting into both on the podcast and on our YouTube channel. But it really is more intrigue around the coaching staff. So make sure you're subscribing to Locked On Lakers on YouTube and you never miss any of the news or analysis. We'll see you guys next time.